Ramaj will send you the updated version of the code just to make sure that we all have the same code that we'll build on today. But I wanted before that you check the code that Ramaj will send in a few minutes. So Ramaj, please, if you haven't sent it yet, please wait until perhaps we resolve some problems in the code that was prepared by different participants, just to practice a bit on what we did. So if you remember last week, okay, so please wait a bit until we code it. So perhaps you can send it at the end of this session around 5 p.m. so that we start the second session with the harmonized code. Thank you. Regarding the code itself, I will share my screen. So if you remember, we started with the variables by the variables declaration, then the parameters declaration. And we said that in the parameters, we have both the variables of the base year and the parameters of the model. We also declared the equations and the set of equations that we had in the, in terms of the mathematical statement that we found in the document. We also showed how the calibration takes place, whether data that come from the social accounting matrix or the parameters that we calibrate based on this data, okay? And then the last step that we have to do before we run the model is the initialization. So for the, I think we stopped at the end of the calibration last Wednesday. So what we have to see now is the initialization process. And for the initialization process, in this step, we have to declare which variables are endogenous and which variables are exogenous. So to do so, we add a .l beside the endogenous variables and a .fx besides the exogenous variables. .l stands for level, and level means that the variable will change its level later. So why do we write it this way, inc.l equal inc o, to tell GUMS that this variable is endogenous, income is endogenous, and given that it is endogenous, it will start from its value of the base year, which is inc o. And we do the same for all the variables, okay? And then as you can see, we have three exogenous variables that are p.fx, which means that this variable will be fixed, it will not change. The same for labor supply and the same for capital supply. Three important notes. First, by default, if we do not declare that a variable is exogenous, GUMS will consider that this variable is endogenous. And that's why, for instance, the variable Leon, we didn't assume it is endogenous because it doesn't have a value in the base year. And given the fact that we do not assign it a .l, by definition or by default, GUMS will assume that this variable is endogenous. That's the first rule in the initialization step. The second rule is that the choice of exogenous variables represents the macroeconomic closure of the model that we have, which means that the choice of this macroeconomic closure will be mainly driven either by the literature or by by the characteristics of the economy or the what we would like to model or what we would like to simulate in the model. That's the second important point. The third and final point is that in general, the only variables that can be shopped are exogenous variables. This means that if I want to run a simulation, I have to shock an exogenous variable. An endogenous variable cannot be shocked. So any questions on these three remarks related to the initialization step? I think there is a question in the chat box, perhaps. Are .L and .fx conventions in GUMS language? Yes. So .L stands for level and .fx stands for fixed. And L means level and fixed means that the variable is fixed. Any other question?
Yes, thanks, Chahir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So just to make sure, it means that the .L and .fx, we cannot use it. So once we use the dot followed by an L, it becomes the convention, right? But otherwise, we can use L and fx as variables, for example, as the name for a variable, for exchange rate or labor.
Yes, sure. Even in our case, we had L, which is labor.
Exactly.
L is a different operator. Like, for instance, D, which means the difference. So it depends on how we write it. But by convention, if we put it .fx or .l, it becomes the operator that shows whether the variable is endogenous or exogenous. Any other questions on this part? Okay, so I will let you finalize the initialization after the calibration, and we start running the different models. So just the last two lines, and we start running the models and start having some exercise, hands-on exercise on how to resolve the model. At the end, we write model basic, that's the name of the model, /all, which means that we want to solve all the equations of the model. And then we tell GUMS to solve this basic model using the solver. If you remember, last week I said that we have different solvers in GUMS, and one of the solvers is the constant the NLP, the CNS, all these solvers that we can use in GUMS. So here the solver that we choose is TNS. Okay, so I will let you finalize the code until this part, and then we start running the model and see what to add. Okay, so whenever you're done with coding, please write in the chat box that you finished. So now it's 4:12. We will have until 4:20 to finalize the code itself. If you have any questions on the coding, please send me in the chat box. So as just to remind you, we had the variables, parameters, equations, the mathematical statement of the equations, all the calibration of the variables of the base year, then the calibration of the two parameters that we had, the rest of the calibration, and the initialization, where we said whether the variables are endogenous or exogenous.
Dr. Chahir, would you please send me the code of the previous lecture, because
which one?
The code of the previous lecture last week. Yes, variables and equation. Thank you.
So So the only part that you have to add is the initialization. So I will let you do the initialization, write these two final commands of model until here, until the semicolon. and we run the codes. I mean, it's better that you don't take my code just to practice on what you have done, to make sure that you're understanding the coding language of GUMS. So build on what you've done last week.
Shahir, could you please get back to the sharing box?
Okay, I will stop sharing my screen. Who would like to share his or her screen? Anybody would like to share the screen in order to see what we've done? Okay, Rami Al-Azhari, would you please share your screen? Okay. So we have the variables, okay, down.
Okay.
Scroll down, please. Parameters. Okay, equations. No, for the equations, you have to delete the word equation, supply, semicolon, and the line where we have exactly. Delete all this. Okay.
I have a bracket here.
No need for a bracket here. That's fine. Move down.
Is why we put a space after each group, for example, after parameters, after equation, why we put a space?
No,
or...
just to make it easier to read. But in general, whenever we have the semicolon, this means that it's the end of this block. So we just put the space to make it more readable.
Okay.
Okay, for the calibration, an important thing for the calibration, like what I said last week, that the position of what we calibrate matters a lot. Because for instance, if we put the YO, which is equal to LO plus KO, if we put it before LO equal LO divided by WO, it will be a value, not a volume. And as I said last week, Gams keep in his memory the last part of, the last thing that we have declared. So this means that in this case, value added will be a quantity, not a value. And then we calibrate alpha and A. And from what we've said also last week, that the values here that we have in alpha and A are quantities, not values, because they are multiplied by prices. And to avoid the problem of double count, we have to have quantities, not values. Then we have the income that is equal to PO multiplied by CO. And then the initialization, okay, down. Okay, so Rami, please press on this red arrow up there. The red arrow where there is the small, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the 8th button. Press on it. Do you want to select your default solver? No.
Okay.
Okay. There is a problem with the license, but it's very weird because in general, we should have not expected this given the fact that we're running a very simple model. When did you download this version of GAMS?
Last week.
Weird. Have you activated it?
No.
Yes, perhaps that's the problem because you have to activate it. Perhaps until you activate it, somebody else can share the screen. Who can share the screen? Okay, Brahim, please go ahead. Variables, parameters, okay, equations, go down, then okay for the calibration, initialization, okay, and at the end we have to write model, model solve, so what we've said, model and the name of the model, you can call it basic for instance, slash space slash all, because you want GAMS to solve all the models, all the equations, sorry. And if you want to solve a specific equation, we can write the name of the equation instead of all. Then enter, solve, the name of the model, which is basic, using the solver that we choose, which is CNS, using CNS, and then press on the green arrow. Oh, that's the same problem. That's very weird. it's also a licensing problem. Is that the case of all participants?
Yes, unfortunately.
Who else?
Aladdin.
That's very weird because in general, GUMS, they make a version, I mean, a trial version that can be used for very simple models. When you download it, Brahim, when did you download it? Ibrahim. Right. Ibrahim, would you please stop sharing your screen?
I think it's about 2 weeks ago.
But in general, it should work. Let me check. Abdullah, do you have a question?
Yeah, just if you can, sorry, I don't have a question. Can you just share what you pasted in the GAMS code so that I can copy paste it in my GAMS? I was a bit late. I was just caught with a meeting.
Yeah, you will. Ramaj will send you the whole code in a few minutes. Everything I mean everything we did so far. So you will receive the whole code of GAMS by email.
I tried. Please share. I tried to run the code. I don't have a license problem, but I think that I got another type of.
Okay, would you please share your screen there?
Please. Okay. So. Can you see it?
Yes, open the. Okay, run it, please.
Let me close this one. So this is. Oh, I think that I closed the one that was open.
But that's the listing. You have to run the basic model. That's the listing. That's the output that you get.
Yes, this is the output. I'm trying to open, by the way.
Yes, press on this folder.
Open I think folder. I closed it by mistake. So let me try to open.
Yes.
It's this one.
Until the end. Yes, please run it.
Okay.
But an important thing before you run it, there is a problem. Back to basic, please. Back to basic.
Semicolon.
Yes, exactly. At the end of the first, at the end of all, after all, and we need a semicolon, and after CNS, we need a semicolon.
Okay.
Now run the model, please. Down again.
That's where it stopped.
Sorry?
That's where it stopped. I mean, I'm having compilation time, 4 errors and 2 0 warnings. So I don't know where, most likely there is a mistake in.
Yeah, in the coding, but before this, it's very because I don't know why the dialog box where you have the errors is not generated. Please go up slowly, please. Slowly, yes, just a second. Okay, so here we have 4 errors that are presented in this paragraph. As you can see, in line 141, there is something declared, but no values have been assigned. Check for missing data definition, assignment, data loading, or implicit assignment via a solve statement. Okay. Then a suffix is missing. Then too many commas and solve key expected. Okay, back to your code, to basic. what's weird here is that in the listing, if you remember, we had the line 141, 143, and 400 something.
Yes.
While the code ends in line 93.
Exactly.
So I think, is that the only code that you've been running?
Yes. Yeah, 93, it stops in 93.
Okay, well, I mean, it's very weird, even in your case. Nadine is sending that she cannot run the model too. It says that there is no license. Karim, the same case. Shebnem, the same case. Well, perhaps until we solve this problem, I will check on GAM's website. I just want to show you the output that. Okay, so perhaps Uznu, would you please share your screen?
So I will stop sharing.
Because even in the case of Salah ad-Din, there is also a problem of licensing because it's solving a model that's not the one that we're talking about. Because first you don't get the dialog box where we have the errors. That's one, and two, it refers to non-existing lines. So that's a bit weird. Would you please perhaps close this untitled document?
Oh, sorry, I stopped sharing. Okay.
Chahir, I do have a license, a full license. So maybe if you share the code, I can try to run it.
Okay, so let's see the code of Uznu, and then we check the code of Abdullah. So the case of Uznu is interesting because, as you can see now, we have what we should get is a dialog box like the one that Uznu has, where it refers to specific lines. So if you press on this red line, error 140, press on it, it will refer to a certain line, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see, it refers to RO. What's being said here is that this is an unknown symbol. Unknown symbol means that this variable has not been declared before. So we have to go up and see whether the RO has been declared or not. So please.
So I have to declare here RO.
No, just a second. No. Delete this, yes. Under parameters here, under parameters. From your perspective, what is the problem?
Yeah, because it's capital here. It should be smaller, I think, no?
It looks zero. It looks like a zero than an O.
Exactly, that they are zeros, not O's, and they have to be.
Okay, so the initial.
In any case, we said that GUMS is not case sensitive, so it doesn't matter whether it's capital or small letters.
So it should be zero.
No, but it must be everywhere with O, because we declare the variables of the base years with O, not zero.
Okay,
so you have to replace everywhere in this parameters block. No, in this parameters block everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of zeros. Yeah, exactly. So these errors, as you can see, are can be identified easily because GUMS tells us where the error is. Okay.
I opened it. Sorry for interrupting. I opened it in GUMS Studio, and now I have the process log on the right instead of GUMS IDE. So now I can see exactly where the errors are located in the script.
Okay, so please, Uznu, no. Run the model again, please.
Okay, I'm running.
So now we have go to the dialog box.
dialog box here on the right, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And press on, we always press on the first line. Where
First,
is
this
where we
one.
have unknown symbol. Press on it.
Yeah.
No, in this case, that's the old. Yes, that's the old listing.
Scroll down. Scroll down.
So here you mean?
No, no,
No.
scroll in the window on the right.
Sorry, because now there are your cameras on the right. Wait, I have to close, I think.
Yes, close it. But now, before we run again, we have to run again. But before we run again.
Okay, I'm running.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, do not run.
Sorry.
In Uznu file here, what is the problem? What do you think in the lines 66 to 74?
66, 74. Yeah.
What do you think? If you have any ideas, please raise your hand just to make the discussion organized.
I think this should be LD.
Please,
This W.
please raise your hand to make the discussion organized because we're talking at the same time.
Okay, sorry.
So what do you think? Not necessarily Uznu, anyone between lines 66 and 74. What is the problem? Any ideas? Here, that's the calibration part. If it's the calibration part, can we use the equations? Because here, in this part, in Uznu's code, we have the exact, notation of equations, which is not correct. Because what I said last week is that we're going to copy paste the equations, but just to do the calibration, but not copy and paste them as they are. So that's why we will have to, we will have to remove all the equations from supply to G equilibrium. You can just delete them. Exactly.
So you mean from 72, 74 to 65?
No. Keep 65 and 66.
Okay.
And delete starting exactly until this. So what is missing in the calibration? What do you think? What is missing in the calibration? Abdullah?
Is it the semicolon for alpha?
The semicolon for alpha, exactly. That's the first error.
Yes.
What else? What else is missing? Do we have a calibration for consumption?
Calibration for consumption? No.
No, so we have to calibrate it. And we don't have also a calibration for labor supply and capital supply, neither for income. So that's why, given the fact that consumption is equal to production, so I can say that CO, because that's calibration, is equal to
Y? No.
Is equal to YO.
Yeah.
And then that income, Inc O, semicolon after YO, new line, Inc O, which is the income of the base year, is equal to PO and CO, PO multiplied by CO. Is that correct? Because I remind you that in order to do the calibration, all the variables should have been declared before. So in the case of Inc O, that is equal to PO multiplied by CO. Then in this case, given that PO is already declared, it's fine. And CO is declared before, so it's also fine. Semicolon.
Yeah, both declared here.
Yes. No, I'm talking even about the calibration itself, not here. That in the calibration part, the variables have been already declared.
Yeah.
Semicolon. And then the final two variables that we have to declare are
Capital supply.
Labor KSO that is equal to KO.
KO.
KSO that capital supply is equal to labor supply. Capital supply source is equal to capital demand.
So KD.
No. KSO that is equal. KSO that is equal to KO or KD in this case because we call it D.
Yeah, KD, I think. Yeah. KDO.
Yes, but here in Uznu's code there is another error related to capital. What do you think? Any insights on that? Why is there an error in terms of capital before we continue coding? What do you think? Rami?
The calibration of KSO, she writes KDO, where she and above she'll write KO.
Exactly, because in some cases you use capital as KD, and in some cases you use it as K. And for GUMS, those are two different variables.
Yeah.
And the same holds for labor demand. It must be either LD everywhere or L everywhere.
So I have to change here the line 59 LDO because I wrote up LD everywhere. So here KDO.
Okay. And you have also to change that in the alpha, in the calibration of
Here. Yeah.
everywhere, even in LD, in LO, which is
Here
equal to
also,
LO divided by WO.
Yeah. And then also here.
And for labor as well. And then in the calibration part, the two lines before, KD as well. No, KDO is exactly in this line. Okay. And then in the initialization part, they must be also KD and KL and LD that are equal to LDO and KDO exactly. And now we can run. Press on the green button. So
Yeah,
now you can
83.
see the number of errors decreased a lot. Now we just have 2 errors. One of them that is always there because it shows that the model has not been solved. So we just have to press on error 141 in line X. Exactly. Press on it. Double click.
I click. Here.
So it's an LSO. So back to the model, back to the code itself, the GMS.
How I will come back?
Sorry?
How I will come back from here?
No, I cannot hear you.
Sorry.
Yes, back to the model.
Okay.
Okay, what is the error in the calibration? Rania, what do you think? In the calibration part, any insights? Rania or Rafa?
LSO equal to in a calibration section. The last line.
Exactly. So first we have a missing semicolon after KDO. No, after KDO, line 70. Line 70.
Line 70. Here.
No, now it's 71.
Here.
Yes.
Okay.
Semicolon and then LSO.
Here the LSO.
That is equal to
LDO.
LDO. Because for GUMS, LSO has not been declared. Run, please. Yeah. Run once again.
Only CNS.
Okay. Now in line 90, we're told that solve key is expected using max min scenario. What is the error here? No, back to the GMS code. Yes? What is missing? What do you think? In the last line, in line 90.
I don't know.
using CNS.
Semicolon after all.
Just note, after all, we need a semicolon. Exactly, that's one. And two, after basic, we need the word using, because that's
Yeah.
that will be used. Run now again.
Perfect.
So now the code is fully working. As you can see, and I will analyze this in Uznu's screen, and then we go back to another code. So as you can see here, GAMS is saying that we have in the first column, as you can see, iteration, the second column phase, the third column invisibility, and those are the three important things that we get in the output of GAMS. So GAMS tries to solve the model through several iterations, okay? And if the invisibility is equal to 0, this means that there is nothing that is infeasible in the model. And if nothing is infeasible in the model, this means that GAMS was able to converge to the equilibrium that we need in the model. And that's why it tells us at the end that GAMS has reached a feasible solution to a square system, meaning that the model has converged and that we have an equilibrium. Did we run any kind of simulations here? No, because the only thing that we did is that we tried to have a model that works using the data of the base year. When the model works with the data of the base year, we can start introducing some simulations. So now we have a model that can work, and later we can use this model in order to run some simulations. Okay. So now, Uznu, please save this model because you will build on it in the next part. Anyone would like to share his or her own screen before we move to the next part? Okay, Chebnem is saying that she has solved the demo license problem. So please share your screen, Chebnem.
Okay. Can you see now? Okay. Could you see my screen now?
Yes, and it's working. So we have the same.
Yeah, I had the license problem before.
Yeah.
And I go to the GAMS website. I can show you that, just a minute. Sorry, I will show you. Here, in the website of GAMS, gams.com/download, you can see below the download part, there is a panel that you can request a free demo license. And if you fill this part, they will send you, they directly send you a mail that you have to confirm your email address. And after that, they send you the license. You have to, I can show you that also.
That's what I mean by activating
yes.
the code, because you have to copy paste what they have here in this email.
Yes, this part.
Exactly. Otherwise, it will not work. That's what I mean by activating the free license that you have.
Yeah, you have to copy this part and save as a text document and name.
Then you import it.
Yes, name this document as gamslice.txt. Then the GAMS automatically get this license, and you can run your model there.
Okay, so I can see from your model that it's working as well.
Okay, yeah.
Please show us again the screen. As you can see on your right hand side, we have here also invisibility of 0, which means that there is nothing that is infeasible in the model, and we reached a feasible solution to a square system.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chebnem.
You're welcome.
Two things here before we continue. The first thing, as you can see in Uznu's model, we had mainly syntax errors, meaning that we had an error in writing the code itself. Errors in writing the code itself means that we had a missing semicolon, we replaced a zero, an O with a zero, a variable has not been declared, and so on. And those errors were very easily identified. The more complicated errors are in general associated to three other things. First, what we call invisibility, that we have an invisibility in the model, and invisibility in general means that the left-hand side of the equation is not equal to the right-hand side of the equation, which means that we don't have an equilibrium. That's the first type of error that in general can take some time. And the invisibility errors are in general due to a calibration problem or a data problem, or that we calibrated a variable in a different way we have declared it in the model. That's the first type of errors. The second type of errors is when we divide a certain variable or a certain parameter by zero. Because if it's divided by zero, this means that it's undefined. And if it's undefined, the model will not be able to converge. And that's why we will see later that in some cases, we might want to impose some conditions on a specific equation to tell GAMS that you have to run this equation if the denominator is not equal to zero. The third type of errors also that can take some time are those also related to this volume versus value variables. Because if I use a variable as a value and then you multiply it by a price, this will affect both the model and the calibration. Okay, so that's mainly the basic model. Any other questions on what we've done so far? So perhaps before we start the new model and we start also running a simulation on the basic model, I will give you a few minutes to make sure that the license is working, because I want you to run the simulation on your own and get the output. So please activate it as Chebnem did from the email that you receive. You will have a paragraph that you will have to copy and paste in a text file, save it on your desktop. Then you have to open GAMS here, file, and then, sorry, just a second, I'll close this. And then you will have to import the license, okay? So you click on File, Options, License, and then you import the license from your desktop, which and the name of the file is GAMS LICE, L-I-C-E, okay? So and then the model will be working without any problem. So please make sure that it's working before we start the new part. Once you do this, please send it in the chat box that you're done. Rafa, yes, you have a question?
Can you show us how after we download the GAMS Studio, yes?
Either GAMS ID or GAMS Studio, any one of them. You will have to fill a dialog box at the end of just a second.
Just show us how to run it or how to work with it.
So that's the website, okay? If you go to download, you will find the release. And here we need to request a free demo license. So you have to first write all the information here, okay? And once you do that, you will receive like what's been said here. You will receive in your email as perhaps Shabnam, would you please show us the email that you received, because I don't have this email.
Yeah. Okay.
So you will receive an email like this one once you fill the application online. And
can you send this email for my personal email, because I have no working email right now.
But in this case, you'll not be able to activate it because it's a personal license.
Yeah, but I think my personal email, I give the administrative my personal email. So
I mean, any email, not necessarily your personal, even your professional email.
So should I connect with ARF network?
No, you have to connect with your own email. I mean,
yeah, my person, there is two email with me, personal and working email.
Any email.
Okay.
But you have to do this in the, in the online form. You will receive this email. Would you please maximize your screen? Yes, please. You will receive this email from GUMS. You will have to copy and paste from the word GUMS until the last line here. So would you please highlight this part, Shabnam, from the word GUMS until the last exactly. So this pink part will have to be copied and pasted in a text document. So you open the text, the note text document, you paste it. So please do it, Shabnam. Copy.
Just a minute.
Exactly. And then you will open text. Any text document.
Yeah, just a minute. Can you see my screen right now?
No, you have to share it.
Sorry, just a minute. Okay.
Exactly. And then you will have to save as.
Yes.
So you save as GUMS, exactly. And then you save it on your desktop.
Yeah.
Once you do this, okay. I can show you the rest. Thank you, Chebnan. So you will do this. Okay. So please stop sharing your screen. Once you do this, you will open File, Options. Sorry, I will share my screen first. So GUMS, Options. You will have a tab here of license, and then you will import the license from your desktop if you have it on your desktop. GUMS license. And then it will be a working version. So please do that before we start working on the code I will send you. Once you're done with that, please send in the chat box that you're done. Nisma is asking for the initialization part. Could the .fx and .l variables be written as arrays in GUMS? What do you exactly mean by be written as arrays in GUMS?
For example, if I deal with many countries, with the same from many countries, and I wanted to make it as exact as one variable.
We will see this when we introduce the second sector.
Okay. I'm just also asking about can GUMS directly maximize the main function y without and in this case I don't need to differentiate it and write the differentiation of the equation of differentiation and so on.
No, for the equations themselves, they have to be written after they have been optimized. What GUMS does is that it maximizes the system or minimizes the system if it's a linear programming system or a non-linear programming system. But for the equations themselves of the model, they have to be written after we run all the details of the model.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
So if once you're done, all of you, please send in the chat box that you're done with the installation and that you don't have any problem with that. Because otherwise we'll not be able to continue the coding. So when you're done, please send done in the chat box.
I didn't get any email for code for GAMS.
Did you add an email that works in the online form?
Yes.
In general, you have to get it.
Can I share my screen for GAMS?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, this is Abiro. Yeah, do you see this browse?
Yes, but did you get that's GAM Studio? Did you get the email of the license code?
Not yet.
Yes, but will not be able to. It will not. I mean, not be able to run the model unless you import the license first.
So after I receive the email, where I can go?
So like what Chebnem has just shown, you will copy and paste the code, the license in a text document. You will save this in on your desktop, and then you will import the license from file. If you press on file.
Yeah. So, not text. So save the code in not text, then import this file to GAMS.
Yes, the text document.
Okay, but I didn't receive the email.
Yes, I mean, check perhaps your spam.
Okay. I will stop the sharing, okay?
Okay.
Doctor, I have another problem.
Sorry?
Doctor, I have another problem. I'm using the version on Mac, so I can't find the file menu. I have to actually two problems. I saved the license that they give to me or they sent to me on a docs file. I don't have a text.
Not docs. It has to be text.
This is one problem. I have to download any application .txt because there is no txt on Mac. Another thing that I don't have the file menu. The program itself doesn't have the file menu. I can share my screen. There is no file menu. There is no. I don't know if you can get it me, but there is no menu called file so that I can. Just drop down this menu and choose license.
Show me the screen, please.
When I share the screen, it's okay. It's this. So, it's just open new solve, and if I try to go to the web.
No, in settings.
In settings.
Yes.
I didn't find anything related to a license. This is general.
Me too. I have the same problem. In GAMS Studio, we don't have this option where we can upload the text file, even in Windows system.
I don't know what, maybe if I don't know what this version or something. It has nothing general. It has nothing to do with license, editor and log, still colors.
Well, I mean, we can't see anything. We still see just the screen with the code. We can't see the dialog box.
Okay, I can open it again. Can you see it now?
No, I think it will not appear because it still gives us the same screen.
Can I share my screen to show you that this option is
try Ibrahim's screen. That you're using an Apple as well? That's an Apple version?
No, this is a Windows version. Even in a GAMS Studio, there is no option. For example, here, license, we don't have an option to upload a TXT file.
No, it's not here. Press on File.
Okay.
Settings.
Even here, we don't have.
Just a second. No. Cancel.
Maybe here.
I think it's the same.
Oh.
No, that's the compilation. Neither edit. Settings. Quit. Okay, and tools. Open tools. No. View. No. View. No. Help. And when you press on GAMS licensing, copy system information.
Okay.
When you press on copy system information,
nothing happened.
It's very weird. And when you run the model, sorry.
But here on the IDE version, here I have the option. Oh, it's okay. I have done this here.
And it's working.
I forget what is the button to run the model.
You have to press on this red arrow.
Where? Here?
Yes. Yes. No. No, it's the same. You haven't imported the license. It's the
I have
same
imported it.
problem. So I will send you, because I mean, on the website of GAMS, in the email, it's very clear. I mean, in terms of steps. But if you don't do it, it will not properly work.
Here I get the email and I created a TXT file and imported it.
And are you sure that you imported this one?
Yes.
No, then you have to then save this this GAMS license.
I have already saved it.
Okay, close. Open GAMS.
GAMS IDE or a GAMS Studio?
IDE.
Okay. File. Option.
We can't see anything. Ibrahim.
Yeah.
No, we can't see anything. It's still a black screen.
Ah. Now.
Yes. Close the two windows that we have here. Yes, and the other one. File. No, choose it. Make sure that you choose it, because it might be the old one. Yes. Okay. Open the code.
Just 1 second. I have the code here.
No, there is something very weird here, because in theory it should work. Then perhaps two things: either close GUMS, restart GUMS itself.
Okay.
That's first, and second, if it still doesn't work, then request a new demo.
Okay, I will do.
Okay.
Thank you.
The others, are you able to have a working license or not? So I
Unfortunately,
think for now, Chebnem has a one that works. Uznu also. Alauddin.
Yes, I have the same problem as Ibrahim. I did the exactly the same steps, but again, the license not worked. So I have to restart it
So
again. Yeah.
I mean, for GUMS ID,
Yeah.
either request a new license if this one is not working,
Okay.
or close GUMS, restart it, and open and insert the license that you have saved, gumslice.txt.
Someone said that we have to uninstall GAMS Studio.
Yes,
and just
I'm talking about GUMS ID, not GUMS Studio. For GUMS ID, even after downloading and installing GUMS, you can still import any license. So
actually, there's a short video in the same email that's sent by GUMS. It's like for 2 minutes. It will tell you exactly how to make the license for the GUMS, even for the studio. It's very helpful.
Okay, so who managed to have a working version of GUMS? Please say yes or done in the chat box. Yes, errors, that's fine. We can resolve this. I'm just asking a question on the demo. Is it working or not? So Rania, okay. Oznur, okay. Rami, okay. The others, please. Salahuddin, okay. Chebnem, fine. The others? Abdullah, you raise your hand. You have a question?
Yeah. Do you mind if I share my screen, or are we moving on?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. So if I go to help and about, it says that I have a license, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I just copy this wording from the clipboard. Should I copy it? And I don't know if it's accessing it. I tried to mimic, but maybe the formatting wasn't right.
But when you run your model, you have the same error that you have a licensing problem?
Yes. See?
Okay. So, okay, close this screen. Do you have the license code itself somewhere on your laptop?
I don't know. This is the only thing I know from here. Is the code somewhere here?
No, it's the whole thing. So copy and paste the whole thing.
Copy to clipboard. Okay.
Open the text.
A text file.
Yes.
Just paste it.
Exactly.
Okay. Save it as a specific thing.
.txt. So you have to write gums slice, gums, GMS, LICE.txt.
GM slice.txt.
It's like gums license, but without NSE. I will send you the name of the file. It has to be like this. And then show me just the txt file before you import it.
Okay.
Please delete everything before large. Exactly. Save as gum slice, like the name I sent in the chat box. Although I'm sure that in your gums installation folder we will find the license that we need, but let's try this option.
Okay.
Close. Open gums.
Okay.
Close the model, please.
So close this guy.
Yes. File. Options. License. Desktop. If you saved it on the desktop.
I put it in my documents. Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
Okay.
Try to run the model. But your license is working, right?
That's what it said. Yeah, I know about that because the company gave me a license before the training. So
no, there is a problem with the license.
Okay.
Because I mean, you have to make that there are two different things: that you have a license and that the license is activated.
Okay.
So perhaps for now, until we check later, perhaps the problem of your own license, you can have a demo license like the one that we did, because I'm sure that the demo license will work.
All right.
Okay.
Could it check the box before? Abdullah, can you open file? Sure. Option, license. Check the box before. Yes. Okay. Then click OK. Check again. It may work.
No, but it will not work because it's the same name.
Mm-hmm.
No, Abdullah, you're always using the same license file. You have to use the license file that we created. No, not this one.
No, I'm just copying something, sending to my IT. So
okay, so open file again. We will try another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Options, license. Open the yes, exactly. Go to the license text that you created.
This one.
Yes.
Okay.
Open.
Chahir.
Open it. You want me to open it?
No. I mean select it, not open it.
Okay. Select it. Okay.
Okay. Excuse me, Chahir.
Yes.
He can just do write .txt. I did the same, and I have solved the problem. On the file out there, this file, call it .txt. Yes. This
Just
one.
like this?
No.
Gams
lice.txt. Yes.
But it's automatically generated, so
No. Yeah. Now try again.
Let's just make sure license. Okay.
no.
No. Okay.
So perhaps during the break, Abdullah, try to download a demo version, and you can see later why your own version is not working. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. The others, do you have a version that works?
I reinstalled it, but it still doesn't work.
Who?
Ibrahim.
Ibrahim or
Ibrahim.
So on GAMS ID or GAMS Studio?
GAMS ID.
And you imported the license and it's not working.
Yeah.
And you're sure that the license is working, the license itself? I mean that we don't have a problem like the one of Abdullah, that you have a license but that does not work.
No, I have the license file.
Well, I mean, if you were in the same room, I could have helped better, but now it's very difficult to see why it's not working. So, so perhaps, I mean, to be on I mean, to be able to work on the code, I suggest that we have an. I mean, we should break at 5:30. But given the fact that not all of us have a working version of GAMS, so please go again for those who don't have a demo that works. Go again to the website of GAMS, fill the application. You will receive a link. Download the GAMS, copy and paste the license as I have shown in the text document, import it, and let's all work with the GAMS ID, not the GAMS Studio, to have everything harmonized across the group. I mean, both of them, they will generate the same thing, but it will be easier to avoid this problem of GAMS Studio. So we you will see it on the same link that I sent Nadine. It's GAMS download. You have the option either to download the Mac version or the Windows version. So please make sure that during, I mean, the break for the coming 12 minutes that you have a version that works. And then during the break also, Ramaj will send you the code, the complete code for the basic model. The most important thing is that we run with the GAMS that we install the code I sent you, because the code I sent you is working. So if it works, this means that GAMS is working and we'll be able to build on it the second model. Okay, so we will break now it's almost 25. So we'll break for 15 minutes. Please make sure that during these 15 minutes, your GAMS is working. Okay, and if you have any problems, please send me in the chat box.
Doctor, just one moment. You said that there is something we need to unify all together. What was it? Because I was trying to I didn't.
You will have, sorry?
You said there is something we need to unify all together, or it's better to have it common, all of us.
I mean, better to use GAMS ID.
Okay. Thank you.
Abdullah?
I have no license, no license file.
Yes, Zahir, sorry.
Chahir, not Zahir. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, so Rafa, you
I have no file for licenses.
But did you receive the email?
No, I didn't receive an email.
But that's it. It will not work if you do not receive the email.
So I'm waiting the email for
But it's very
license.
weird because in general, the email is automatically generated. So perhaps either you inserted your email incorrectly or that your email is not working.
No, it's working. Rajima sent me a message now. She will share to me the code for GAMS, but I need the license text.
But and you inserted the same email on the online form?
Yeah.
Perhaps
can I write my email for you and send the text for me?
I mean, send me, but I don't think it will be different. Send it to me.
Okay.
Rafa, did you check your spam?
I received from Rajama.
No, did you check your spam, because you can receive the GAMS email in your spam folder, not in your inbox.
Yeah, I check it. Yeah, there is no email for that.
Because now, for instance, I received it in my spam. It's an email called "No reply request for a GAMS demonstration license." Did you receive this email?
Not yet. Either in spam.
Okay, well, I will send you now the license.
Okay.
And in theory, it must work.
Yes. I solved the problem of my version. My problem was that the license text file was saved in the desktop, and it should have been saved in document in GAMS file.
No, not necessarily. Even if you save it on your desktop, it will work.
But this is my problem was. No, what's important, it's all.
Rafa, I sent you the license. You can now save it as a text.
وصلني الايميل. Yeah, I received it.
Okay. So please make sure that your license is working, and we will meet in 6 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions on what we've done so far?
I just have a comment. I actually can't install anything due to security related, kind of restrictions on my
Okay.
laptop. So the IT is, it's out of work hours. So
Yeah.
Salah ad-Din maybe can help me if his stuff is working. Salah, is your stuff working? I don't know if he's back, but most likely I will have to watch the recording and use the code once they fix it and try to rerun the last remaining part of today's exercises, if that's okay with you.
Any other comment or question? Just
Doctor, if you are going to share the code, so if I have a problem in my code, it's running, I only have one error, but I can't run it with this error. So if you're going to share the code, I don't have to bother you with my code. It's okay. I only have.
Actually, Ramesh sent you the code.
Really? It's in file, not in a message.
No, it's in
email.
Gams code that Gams has. Sorry, that Ramesh has just sent you.
By email, Shahir.
Yes.
By email, yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Shahir.
Yes.
How I can sure that everything is okay? Because
you mean for the code itself?
Yeah, for the licenses, and I just opened the email who Ramesh sent to me.
No, not Ramesh sent you the code I created. Yeah. But I sent you the license itself.
I follow the steps. I follow the steps and I get my code for licenses.
Yes, so try to run the model I sent you. If it works, then this means that your demo license is working. Okay. So now what we'll do, I will show you the code I have, okay? That includes the one that all of you received the code, right? Everybody received the code that Ramesh sent?
Yes, I received.
Okay. So now please open this code. And you will see here in this code that we have the equations, the variables, the parameters, the calibration, the initialization, everything, right? And in at the end, you will see that we have an extension, or not an extension, but something that I have added at the end of the code that includes something called parameters and then a new table. What is the idea behind this part? So I'm just opening the file, just a second. So now you can see my screen. Here is it. So now you can see the screen, right? At the end, what we have a table that I created called parameters with a list of new parameters that are kvar, lvar, lsvar, and so on. So the idea here is that I want to calculate some new parameters that will be used in order to create the new values after I run the simulation. So I created all the variables that are called kvar, lvar, And as usual, I first declare and then I assign a mathematical value, right? So here I have now the names of the parameters followed by the formulas for each variable that I want, for which I want to calculate the growth rate of the variable. So what is the idea of this formula? I'm telling GUMS that KL, which is the variable after it is chopped, because I remind you that .L means that the variable is endogenous, right? So KL minus KO, KO is the variable of the base year divided by the value of the base year. So this means that each line represents here what? Represents the growth rate of each variable. The growth rate of what? Of the variable with respect to the base year. Okay? And the same holds for all the variables. So I create these formulas. I'm just showing you the details of the code, but this can be done also in a very simple way. But again, as I told you last week, I prefer to have all the details of the different codes that we're doing, just to know the technique, how to do things manually, and then everything can be automated later. And then I ask GUMS to create a file called results. This file must be an Excel file with a number of decimals that is equal to 3. Okay? And this PC, as far as I remember, is something related to the number of columns and their width. And then I ask GUMS to put in this file that I called results a set of columns. The first column is called variables. And whenever I want GUMS to consider something as a text, I put it between quotation marks. So it will be put variables. The first column will be called variable. The second column includes the value of the base year. And that's why here I have in the second column KO, LO, LSO, and so on. Then in the third column, I have the level, which is the level of the endogenous variable after it has changed. And the last column will be the growth rate or the variation that we have between the base year and the level. Okay? So that's the last table that we have, and that includes everything that will be calculated, after the we run the shock. Is the idea of this table clear? Any questions on that?
Can you please tell again what is PC and ND?
So the
results.pc.
Sorry?
What is the PC and ND again? Can you repeat, please?
The ND, okay, is the number of decimals that we have in GUMS. Okay, the number of decimals that will be created, or that will be in the table that we'll get. We will have the number of decimals that are included in each column that is equal to 3. Okay, is that clear on the first question?
Yes.
For the PC is what we call the print control. And the idea of this print control is that it's a suffix that we have in GUMS that we add in order to tell GUMS that we need a file that is called, the suffix of the file is PC. So it's a format it's a format of the file that is generated and that we call the put file. So this file will include the results. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
So what matters for us is, I mean, the most important part is what we have in, just a second, I will show you again the screen. Yes. So is this part where we have the formulas for each growth rate that we calculate, the characteristics of the files, and then the table itself. So now our code is complete. I said before the break that what kind of variables can be shocked. What kind of variables can be shocked?
Exogenous.
Exactly. The exogenous variables only can be shocked. And if only exogenous variables can be shocked, this means that we're going to shock one of the three variables, either the price or labor or capital. Okay? If I want to run a simulation, as I said, I cannot run a simulation before making sure that my model is working without a simulation. Because if it's not able to reproduce the economy without a simulation, then it will not be able to reproduce the economy with a simulation. Okay? So now let's assume that we're going to shock labor supply, for instance. Okay? Intuitively, what happens? Just look by looking at the economics of the simulation. If labor supply increases, what would be the immediate effect on the economy? What do you think? Alauddin, what do you think? What would be the immediate effect of an increase in labor supply?
The LS labor supply, LSO will change.
Yeah. But I mean intuitively, from an economic perspective, what is the implication of an increase in labor supply?
I think the production will increase.
Yes, no, Ale, go ahead, please.
Yeah, decrease in wages.
A decrease in wages, exactly. Yeah. So that's the immediate effect.
Right.
Nadine, if wages decrease, what will happen?
Demand will decrease, but
demand will decrease because demand will decrease with through which channel?
Through consumption.
Before consumption?
I want to check the model itself. Just 1 second. Before consumption, income.
Exactly, through income. Yes. So when wages decrease, income will decrease. And as we can see in our model, income is proportional to consumption because income is equal to price multiplied by C. And given that price is exogenous, so consumption will be proportional to income. So a decrease in income will lead to a decrease in consumption. Is that clear until now?
Yes.
And clearly, if consumption decreases, Abdullah, what would be the effect on the economy? What do you think?
It will decline.
A decline in consumption will lead to what?
A decline in economic activity.
Which is measured how in our model? How it's measured in our model?
Through, since I don't have it open now.
Yeah, intuitively, just from the structural model that I presented. Through why?
Income.
Through production.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Production will decline. Yeah.
Exactly. So production will decline, which makes sense because we know that C is equal to Y. And if C declines, this means that Y declines, right? But yeah. At the same time, if let's look at the rest of the model. So we talked about an increase in labor supply will lead to a decrease in wages, right? But a decrease in labor, an increase in labor supply at the same time with a decrease in wage, labor demand will increase, right? If labor demand increases, so this means that in theory, we should produce more because I will hire more labor. And if I hire more labor, this means that I need more of what?
Capital.
More of capital, exactly. Did the capital supply increase in my simulation? Did capital supply increase?
No.
No.
No, it didn't increase. And if it didn't increase, so an increase in capital demand without an increase in capital supply should lead to an increase in the capital remuneration, right? So this means that in my income equation, I have two different forces, an increase in wages and a decrease, a decrease in wages and an increase in capital remuneration. So that's why I want to see at the end of the day, what would be the net effect on income? Because this will also determine the effect on consumption, because perhaps the increase in rent might be higher than the decrease in wages, which means that my income increases, and if income increases, consumption will increase. So do you see, that's why when we reason at the general equilibrium level, we see that we have different forces and different variables that might have different effects. And that's why if I reason at the macro level and the general equilibrium level, I will be able to take into consideration all these different effects. So before running the details of the simulation, I just want to present you how the rationale or what is the economic mechanism of the model itself. Is the explanation I presented clear before we see what happens in GAMS?
Yes,
any questions? Rafa, is this an old raise or you have a question?
I want to ask what's capital remuneration? You said
it's the capital rent. It's R in our model.
It's
interest rate? You mean interest rate?
But here it's not really perceived as the interest rate because it's the remuneration of the factor of production of capital, not just the investment cost. Interest rate is the investment cost, but rent is the capital remuneration.
It's okay. like rent, yeah.
It's rent, yes.
Rent, yeah. Okay.
So concretely, how I'm
I'm sorry, I just have another question. You said that you asked if capital supply increased in the simulation. I'm sorry, but I can't. Did we? Is there any results that we can see for the simulation? Maybe I lost this point because I was looking for the license.
No. We said that the initial, the initial simulation that we run is an increase in labor supply, but at the same time, I didn't change capital supply. So this means that capital supply is constant.
Okay. Okay. So if we are assuming it to be constant from the very beginning, we will not change it unless it's a shock to the system. That's what
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So now I will run a simulation where my labor supply increases, let's say, by 20%. So I will multiply, as you can see here, labor supply by 1.2. Okay. If I do this, and then I have the rest of the parameters that are created, I will press on this red arrow. Sorry. I will press on this red arrow, and I will get a GAMS file, an Excel file, as you can see here in the last line. It shows me the location of the result. So as you can see, we get the invisibility in the beginning is positive, and this is very important. Now you can see that the invisibility is equal to 2.4. while when we were seeing the initial files, we had an invisibility of 0. Why is that the case? Because when I run a simulation, the model faces a shock. So my left-hand side is not equal to my right-hand side, and that's why I have an invisibility. But then the model tries to converge until it reaches a new equilibrium. And as you can see, GUMS runs several iterations, in our case 11 iterations, until it reaches a new equilibrium that we have here, right? And now the invisibility is equal to 1.8 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 10, which means that it's 0.1018. So this means that it's almost 0. And that's why in real models, when we will see later real models, we will see that the invisibility is never a perfect 0, but we accept up to e to the power negative 10 or negative 9. I mean, and the higher the better, because if it's negative 13, this means that I have 0.12 zeros and then 184, right? So this shows me that my model was able to converge. Why it was able to converge? Because there is no invisibility. And how I make sure that there is no invisibility? I make sure that there is no invisibility through the fact that my left-hand side is equal to my right-hand side, and that there is no difference between them, given that the overall performance of the model shows that I have 0 invisibility, which is measured by this line. And then we see that we have a feasible solution to a square system, as you can see. If we go back to the listing file, the LST, in general, if I have an invisibility, a positive invisibility, for instance, I got an invisibility of 2.4, which means that my model is not converging, right? So I will search here for the word infez, just to see where I have an invisibility. And I will check for that. So here I have, in my income equation, I have an invisibility. And in the labor equilibrium, I have also an invisibility. Why? From your point of view, I have an invisibility only in these two equations. While if I look at the other equations, for instance, the equilibrium of demand, the left-hand side is equal to 0, which means that the difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side is equal to 0. For income, there is 1.2. But for capital demand, it is 0. For labor demand, it's 0, and so on. The only equations where I get an invisibility, a positive invisibility, is the income one and the labor supply one. Why is that the case? What do you think?
Because we were shocking the system with the labor supply, and the first equation to get affected was income, I guess.
Because, I mean, in other words, so what you said is correct, but in other words, we shocked a variable that is that's explicitly present in these two equations, which are labor supply and income. So that's why it is acceptable to have an invisibility in the shocked equations, or sorry, in the equations where we have explicitly the shocked variable, right? But overall, the model, after facing this shock, runs several iterations in order to have a new equilibrium with the new labor supply. That's why my overall invisibility was 1.8 multiplied by 10 to the power minus 11. And then at the end, you will see for all the continuous variables that we have, that they are negative infinity to plus infinity. Then we get here the block of equations. We have 8 equations, 8 single equations, but we have 11 variables. And among the 11 variables, we have 8 unfixed variables that are the endogenous variables. So that's the listing file. And then we can see that we have a feasible solution to a square system. Now what we want to see is the Excel file itself that includes the results. So we go to where the file is located. Okay. So in documents, GUMS directory, we'll have a file called results. So I will show you that, the file that is being generated, because this will be the file that we will analyze. So can you see now the Excel file?
Yes.
So that's the file that has been generated by GUMS. We have, as I said in the first column, the name of the variable that were included between quotation marks to tell GUMS that this is a text, not a number. In the second column, we have the value of the base year. In the third column, we have the new level after the shock. And in the fourth column, we have the variation. And the variation means the growth rate of each variable. So, Chebnem, what was the initial shock that we run?
Initial shock? Just
the initial shock, what was it?
It was labor supply. We shocked the labor supply.
Exactly. So the initial, I will highlight in yellow what we're able to analyze. So labor supply increases by 20%. This increase in labor supply by 20% is associated with a decrease in wages by 7%, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And the increase in labor supply, in theory, we have an equilibrium. So an increase in labor supply must be coupled by an increase in labor demand. So that's why labor demand will increase proportionally to the increase in labor supply.
Yes.
The increase in labor demand will lead firms to produce more.
Yes.
So if I want to produce more, this means that I will need more capital and more labor. But capital supply is constant. And if capital demand cannot increase because capital supply is constant, so in this case, the rent has to increase. So if you remember, in our model, we had income that was equal to WLS plus rent KS, right? If KS is constant, R increases, LS increases, and wage decreases. So in this case, I expect the income to increase because I have two variables that increase and one variable that decreases. So in overall income increases. Increases by what? By 11.56%. And we have seen that prices are constant. So that's because it's the numeraire of the economy. So the increase in income will lead to a proportional increase of consumption. And we know that consumption is equal to production. So with the increase in labor demand and capital demand that didn't increase, but I'm producing more, so production will increase. And this will ensure the equilibrium. So that's how we can generate the results of the model and how we can interpret it. 5 important remarks that you have to bear in mind when we analyze the results of a CGE model. First, you must write down just the general intuition of what you expect. That's why before running the simulation, we had a general discussion on the potential effect of this simulation, because it has to be in line with the theory. That's 1. 2, the advantage of GUMS is that it helped me obtain concrete numbers on the magnitude of the shock. So if you remember, when we start analyzing the model, we said that perhaps consumption is going to decrease, but we had another force driven by the increase in rent, so perhaps consumption will increase. So the advantage of the CGE model is that it will help me determine the effect of which variable dominates the other. And that's the second point. The third point, never ever, when you're analyzing your results, you start analyzing things that do not exist in your model. Because a model includes specific variables and specific equations. So for instance, here if income increases, I cannot say that income will increase because of an increase in remittances, because I'm not modeling remittances. I cannot say that income will increase because of lower savings, because I don't have savings. So we always have to limit our analysis to what we have in the model in order to be evidence-based and economically acceptable. That's the third point, okay? The fourth important point when analyzing also your CGE model is that you have to go through all the numbers to understand what's going on. But in your paper, when you will write a CGE paper, there is no need to go into the details of every and each single number that you obtain. Because at the end, it will not be a report of an international organization. We're writing a paper that has to be on average, let's say 30 pages. So that's why we have to understand everything that is being generated by GUMS. But when I write down, I will just write the most important things that are related to my research question. Okay? The last point, as you can see, all the exogenous variables that have not been shocked have a growth rate of 0, which means that they did not change. And this is the macroeconomic closure. Any questions on what I have done so far? Anything that's not clear in terms of the GUMS code, the simulation, and the interpretation of the simulation? All is clear? Okay.
I have a question if you don't mind.
Yes.
Is the model going to tell us something about the time frame we need to make these changes happen? Like from, I know that we have it at a steady state, then we have this shock, then we have the difference. So the difference is suggesting like coming back to the steady state?
No, here it's a static model. And if it's a static model, this means that I'm comparing two static equilibria, one before the shock and one after the shock. In dynamic models, I can have the results over several years. And for dynamics, we have two types of dynamics. We have the sequential dynamics and we have the intertemporal dynamics. The sequential dynamics, time is discrete and we have an equilibrium at each point of time. But for the intertemporal dynamics, it shows me how the adjustment itself takes place. But in all cases, I'm comparing different equilibria.
Yeah, so I can tell what will happen, but I cannot tell when and how, right?
No, I can tell how and when. How, because I'm analyzing all the mechanisms that I have just presented.
Sure.
And when, it depends whether it's a static model or a dynamic model. What I'm describing what will happen to the economy at time t or t+1 or t+2 when I do this policy change. So that's why I will be able to inform the policymaker if I remove subsidies on oil, what will be the welfare in 2030 and 2032, for instance.
So what you showed us right now is a static model for, let's say T. Let's not focus here what the meaning of T.
It's not even T. It's not even T. I'm comparing before and after. It's just one period without a time dimension. So I'm comparing the equilibrium of the economy before the shock and the equilibrium of the economy after the shock.
Okay.
There is no time dimension.
Thank you.
Any other question?
But these results after shocking the system, right?
Yes.
Which command did we write to make it to tell that we're shocking the labor supply? Because when I went back to the commands, I didn't get which one.
This one.
You're not sharing the screen.
This one. When I increased labor supply by 1.2. Why by 1.2? Because I wanted to increase by 20%. So I will multiply labor supply by 1.2, and I can do exactly the same thing, either for capital supply if I wish, or for price. I can increase prices, for instance, if we assume that we're an oil exporting country and that oil prices have increased, and this led to an increase in overall prices of the economy. So I will increase prices by 30%, for instance. And then we can see, we can analyze also the results of this simulation.
Okay, I have another question. These
Yes?
results are after the shock. So we compare it by looking at the variation and the growth, but we don't have like results before and after, because before everything will be like 0, right?
No. I have them in the file. Here are they.
Wow.
Just a second. So here is the before and after. So in the Excel file, you have the name of the variable. That's the base year, which is before. That's the level after. And that's the variation between the before and after.
Yes, I'm very sorry. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Other questions? Ibrahim?
Yes, I tried to apply a shock on capital supply.
Yes.
But I didn't get an Excel file for the results. Would you please try it, for example?
So, but did you close the initial file that you have?
Yes.
Okay, so because if I write it this way, 1.2, for instance, or 1.15, the increase in capital supply. Just a second, I will share my screen. So now you can see I increased my capital supply by 15%. So I will run the model. Again, I have an feasibility of -16, which is perfect. A feasible solution to a square system. And then I have the new result, the new file result. Can you see the Excel file? Here is the Excel file. So the increase in capital supply by 15%, which will be associated with an increase of capital demand, which will lead to a decrease in remuneration. But I want to increase production, so labor demand will increase. But given the fact that labor demand cannot increase because labor supply is constant, so wages will increase. This will lead to a proportional increase of income that increases consumption. At the same time, production will increase because we have a higher demand, and prices remain constant.
Okay, so we need to close the...
You need to close the Excel file itself in order to let GUMS overwrite the initial file. Or you rename the file, for instance, just a second, I will show you. So perhaps here in GUMS, instead of writing here the file results, I can write results, for instance, sim1 or results2, anything. Okay.
Okay.
Other questions?
Professor,
yes.
Could we perform two scenario or two shocks in one simulation?
You mean if I want to increase capital supply and labor supply at the same time?
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Yes. Definitely. I will just multiply both by the numbers I want to do. I can even have 3 simulations.
And the result will be aggregated.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thanks.
So it will show me what is the net effect of the overall shock. And for instance, I was just working on a paper where I'm developing a model for Egypt, and we're examining what is the effect of the policy response of the COVID shock on the Egyptian economy. And we wanted to simulate how the economy responded to an increase in the fiscal stimulus, to a decrease in interest rate, to an increase in social transfers, and all this have been combined together in order to see what is the net effect.
Yes, thanks.
Other questions? So for the LST file, it's automatically generated. Whenever I press, on this red arrow, automatically the LST file will be generated by GUMS here. And in the LST, as I said, we have first the model itself that I wrote. Then we have the solution of the model, where I'm taking the difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Then we have the solution report with the upper and the lower limit of the variables. And finally, we have the summary statistics of the model. Rami?
I have a question, please. In the case of multiple shocks, can we identify the order of shocks occurrence?
Yes, but in this case, I have to distinguish between individual simulation and combined simulations, meaning that if I want to see what is the effect of an increase in labor supply, then I will run a simulation with labor supply, okay? And then I will run a simulation with an increase in capital supply. And then I will run a third simulation where I will combine both. And this will help me see what is the effect of each simulation on its own, and what is the net effect when I have different shocks that affect the economy. But in general, it's preferable to start the simulation gradually, meaning that I examine the effect of a specific shock to understand what's going on, and then the other shock, and then I combine them. Because if I combine them from the beginning, I'll not really be able to examine or to analyze what is driving my results.
Sure. So I have to make it manually.
No, not manually. I said gradually, not manually. GUMS will do everything, but we have to do it gradually, meaning start with one simulation, another simulation, combine 2 simulations, combine 3 simulations, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
Ibrahim?
Yes, please, on what basis we define the value of shocks, for example, 1.2 or 1.3?
It depends on what you want to do. That's really an assumption. For instance, I will give you a concrete example from what I did in the this COVID paper with my co-author. We wanted to see how the Egyptian economy will be affected by the policy response that the government did after the COVID shock. So we checked the increase in the public spending by this time, and it increased, for instance, by 22% of the public spending. So in this case, I will simulate an increase in public spending by 22%. In other words, the magnitude of the shock has to be economically justified. Why I'm assuming this? Another example, I can run a simulation where I will examine what happens if subsidies decrease by 20%. And why this 20%? Because the government is planning to reduce subsidies by 20%. So I want to tell the Prime Minister what happens to the economy once we reduce public spending by this amount. Oh, sorry, once we reduce oil subsidies or food subsidies by this amount. So in general, it has to be economically justified, this number. So the 20% and the 15% I did here were just some examples.
Okay, thank you.
علاء الدين.
Yes, please. Shahir, shall I calculate alpha and A now or after the removers or simulation?
Alpha and A have been already calibrated, because if they have not been calibrated, the model wouldn't work.
Yeah. All right.
So in the calibration step, they have been already calculated by the model.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, if we don't have more questions on this part, then we move to the second model. So the second model, I will first show you the code, the model itself, explain it, and then we will code it in GUMS as well. But this time will be a bit different, because I will show you the model. I will show you how we do it. Aladdin, do you have a question, or it's an old race?
Sorry, old race.
Okay. I will show you the simple, the second model. What are its assumptions, and how we can write it in GUMS. So model 2, we'll call it simple. The first model was basic. And the main difference is that we still have a Cobb-Douglas production function, nothing has changed. A closed economy, again. Two production function, again, nothing has changed. But now we have two goods, not one good, because in the first model, it was just one good. We still have perfect mobility of labor and capital between sectors, consequently one rent and one wage, no savings, and equilibrium in labor, capital, and goods market. So that's now the model. So we still have a Cobb-Douglas production function, but the difference is that now we have a subscript I, which represents the sector we're talking about, whether it's sector 1, agriculture, or sector 2, industry, for instance. Okay? And this will mean that all the variables, or not all, but most of the variables, will have to be indexed over I. So we have yi that is equal to ai, ki, alpha I, li 1 minus alpha I. That's identical to what we had. Then we have, given that we have one labor and one capital, given that we have a perfect mobility of labor and capital between sectors, so they will be able to move between different sectors. And if they will be able to move, then we will have just one wage and one rent. Okay? That's why W and R, they do not have a subscript, but all the other variables, they do. Revenue doesn't have a subscript because it's a representative agent that has one revenue. Again, for revenue here, it's the same, but what's different is this parameter beta. What does the parameter beta represent from your perspective?
The revenues of each sector.
Sorry?
The revenues for each sector.
No. What else?
Maybe it's a weighted average for each.
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
The share of revenue that will spend on the goods E.
The good I.
The good I, yes.
Exactly. So that's the share of revenue attributed to a specific good, because I can write this beta as being the ratio between PC over revenue. So it will be the share of budget allocated to good I divided by the revenue. Okay? And then the sixth equation is the same. The demand is equal to the supply of each good. And finally, for labor demand and labor supply, now I have a labor demand in the first sector, a labor demand in the second sector. We have also a capital demand in the first sector and a capital demand in the second sector, right? So in this case, I have my total labor supply of the economy must be equal to the sum of the labor demand hired in each sector. That's why I have the summation operator here. So how many equations do we have in this model?
15.
Why 15?
Because we have two equations in each.
Where we have two equations? Here we have one or two equations.
Two.
Here we have one or two.
Two.
Exactly. One or two.
Two.
Yes.
One
or two.
One equation. Two equation. Two equation.
Yes.
One.
Yeah.
One.
Great. So if we add up this, will be how many equations?
13.
13, exactly. So we have 13 equations, right? What is the maximum number of endogenous variables that we can have?
I think 11.
No, in theory, what is the number of maximum variables that we can have?
12.
8.
Sorry?
12.
Why 12?
Because if 12 of the equations are in equilibrium, the 13th one is also in equilibrium.
So, I mean, what you said is correct, but to put it in the language that we used, I remind you that we have to have the Léon variable in one of the equations here, right?
Right.
Either equation 6, 7, or 8. So if I assume that I have it here, so this means, and this Léon variable must be endogenous. So this means that along with the Léon variable, the maximum number of endogenous variable I can have is 12, because it will be 12 endogenous variable plus Léon. It will be 13 endogenous variable, which is equal to the number of equations that we have, right? So let's now count the number of variables that we have. For Y, how many variables do we have?
2.
2, exactly. A is a parameter, so we'll write it here. Alpha is a parameter, we'll write it here as well. Capital, 1 or 2?
2.
2. Labor?
2.
Wages?
Wages? 1.
1, exactly. Rent? 1.
1.
Prices? 2.
2. For sector.
Revenue? 1. Labor supply? 1. Capital supply? 1. Production? We already presented it.
C, we forgot C.
So consumption 1 or 2?
2.
2. Did we miss anything? And the Léon. So let's now see how many variables do we have. 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6. 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. Plus 2, 15. Plus Léon. We have how many variables? 16. How many equations?
13.
How many equations?
13.
13. So this means now that we have an over or an under-identified model.
Under-identified?
Under-identified because I have more unknowns than equations, so I cannot solve the model. So this means that I have to have 3 exogenous variables, right? The 3 exogenous variables will be, given that it's a short-term model because I'm comparing to equilibrium, I can assume that capital supply and labor supply are exogenous. If capital supply and labor supply are exogenous, how many endogenous variables do we have? Sorry?
14.
14, exactly, 14. So we have 14 endogenous variables and 13 equations. We still have an under-identified model, so we have to exogenize one model, or one variable. Given the fact that we need a numeraire for the economy, here we have 2 prices. We will assume that the price of one of the 2 sectors is constant. Let's say that it will be the price of good one, which is agriculture. So in this case, I have 3 exogenous variables out of the 16 variables, which means that we have 13 endogenous variables, and the 13 endogenous variables will be resolved if we have 13 equations, and the model is exactly identified. Is this clear? Any questions on the model structure, the rationale, the way we count the variables?
Yeah, I have a question. Just I want to give me example of how count the equation.
So if we assume that we have 2 goods, this means that whenever we have this I, we will count it twice because 1 time for each good. Okay, so here we have yi, we have a production function for good 1 and a production function for good 2. We have a labor demand for good 1 and a labor demand for good 2. We have the capital demand for good 1 and the capital demand for good 2. We have the demand good of the good itself, 1 and 2. We have the equilibrium for good 1 and good 2, but the other equations that they don't have an index I, which means that they are just 1 equation.
Yes.
Other questions? Anything that's not clear on this, the rationale of the model itself? So as you can, yes?
Also, please, when you assume that the prices of one sector is fixed, it sounds for me arbitrary. How we decide which variable we will have to fix or consider exogenous?
Okay, so as I said, all this can be explained by the choice of the macroeconomic closure, right? And the macroeconomic closure in general is defined based on the literature, the characteristics of the economy, and what I want to do. So to give you an example, here we have a short-term model. This short-term model, because I don't have a time dimension, so it's normal to assume that capital supply and labor supply will be constant. Why? Because in the short term, labor supply and capital supply, they do not change, right? And
yes,
in general, we need a numeraire for the economy. And we can assume that the price of agriculture being a traditional sector that has homogeneous prices, that it is the numeraire of the economy. So in this case, we can assume that the price of the agriculture will be the numeraire. If I look, for instance, at the case of the Egyptian economy, I can say that the share of public spending or the share of fiscal deficit to GDP is constant because that's one of the characteristics of the economy. I can say that the exchange rate will be the numeraire, because in general, exchange rate do not change drastically in the Egyptian economy, and so on. So in order to determine which variables are exogenous and which variables are endogenous, and consequently determine the macroeconomic closure of my model, we rely on the literature, we rely on the characteristics of the economy itself, and we rely on what is our research question. Because if I want to simulate a certain policy, it must be associated to an exogenous variable. Why? Because I can only simulate exogenous variables.
Okay, but when, for example, if we face this situation where for example, fiscal deficit, we consider that based on the economic reality, for example, in Egyptian economy, as a fixed or exogenous variable. And we don't want to imply or apply a shock on this exogenous variable. We want to apply this in other variable.
No problem.
Is that it doesn't affect?
No, it doesn't affect, but in this case, you will have to choose another macroeconomic closure that remains justifiable.
Okay.
So for instance, I will assume that the share of current account deficit to GDP is constant.
Mm-hmm.
And in any case, I will have to provide a justification for why I'm adopting this macroeconomic closures.
Okay, clear.
Any other questions? So now we have seen the structure of the model. I will show you the beginning of the code. So the first thing that you will do now, you will open the same model that we started today, that I sent you, okay? That is called basic, right? You will save as a new name, and we call it simple. Why? Because we will build on the model that I have sent you. I will just show you the beginning of the model, how we can append the code, and you will work on your own for this model for Wednesday. So what we'll do in the beginning of the session on Wednesday, we will correct the codes that you have done, because this is a more complicated model, and it will help you and it will train you, I mean, on GAMS. So please save as the document, the code I sent you under the name 2_simple, okay? And then now, what is the main difference between the initial model and this one? What is the main difference?
Two sectors.
What? Sorry?
Two sectors.
Two sectors, exactly. So the fundamental difference between what we had and what we have now is that we have two sectors. And that's why we want to tell GAMS that we have two sectors. So in this case, now the main difference is that I will introduce this, a new command that is called set, meaning that I have a set, a certain set whose elements are I. And this I can take, in this case, two values, agriculture and industry. Agr, that stands for agriculture, and industry, that's an ind that stands for industry. So as you can see, I will open the set and I will close it here, right? For the list of variables, it's identical, nothing has changed. Okay. The parameters, again, they haven't changed. But now for the equations, things will be different. I will show you one equation and give you one example And the rest of the code, you will do it on your own for Wednesday. Okay? So far, the main difference, please do the changes. Set I, where we have the agriculture and industry. Okay? And we declare this in the beginning of the code. Then we're going in the equations part, add the index I for the equations that are indexed over I. And if you remember, in our initial model, the equations that had an I are production, labor demand, capital demand, demand for goods, and the equilibrium. So those are the 5 equations that will have an a subscript I. So we have here the supply with an I, the demand, the labor demand with an I, the capital demand with an I, the goods demand with an I, and the equilibrium of goods with an I as well. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. I will just give you one equation, okay, that you will do, right? So I will send you this equation in the chat box. That's the supply equation. As you can see, I sent it to you. So now replace the old supply equation, only the supply equation, replace it with this new one. And as you can see here, supply of I, 2 dots. Now all the variables must have a subscript I. So yi that is equal to E, which is the equality, equal to AI, Ki, alpha to the power alpha I multiplied by Li to the power 1 minus alpha I. So what you will have to do for next week is to just a second. So you will have to go through the initial model, change the model notation, okay, change the calibration, okay, change the calibration of the parameters as well, everything, change the initialization, and stop at the solve part. No need to change the parameters part. So is what you're going to do for next week clear? Sorry, not next week, but after tomorrow. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes, yes.
But in this case, you will need some extra data. Why you will need some extra data? Because for labor and capital, you just have them for one sector, which when we said that capital is equal to 4 and labor is equal to 6, right? Now we want to have a value that comes also from the SAM, labor for agriculture, labor for capital, labor for agriculture, labor for industry, capital for agriculture, and capital for industry. Okay? So those values are the values that will be used to replace the labor and capital that you have. And that's the way we write the labor of agriculture, the labor of industry, the capital of agriculture, and the capital of industry. So please copy and paste those values instead of those that you have, okay? And you will start do the modifications across all the model. And on Wednesday, we'll start by correcting all these codes and see what happens in the simulation when we have 2 sectors and when we're going to shock one sector without shocking the other. So what I sent you, so the 3 main modifications that we talked about today: first, the set declaration; second, what are the equations and the mathematical changes that will be associated to this new model; and third, the new data that we need that are presented by the labor demand and capital demand that come from the SAM. Any questions on what I have done so far? Anything that's not clear?
Professor, I have a question.
Yes.
Does exist the case that we find a model with a number of goods greater than the industry or the sector?
A number of, sorry?
Number of goods greater than the number of sectors.
Yes, we can, and in this case, we assume that we have some sectors that are multi-product.
Yes.
We can, yes.
Thanks.
Please, I have a question.
Yes.
Please, I have a question. Why in the supply equation we write supply I as index of industry, and in the labor demand we write agri, AGR, not but just I.
It's not aggregate, it's agriculture.
Agriculture, excuse me. Why there we write just I, and in
because we have a different. If I write LO with an I, this means that labor will be identical for the two sectors. In this example, they are the same. But in other examples, I can have a value for the labor demand in agriculture and a value for labor demand in industry. So if I want to assign a specific value to each sector on its own, then in this case, I put it between quotation marks.
So can we write, for example, supply end into quotation mark or not?
Sorry, no, I didn't get this.
Just I will show you.
Sorry?
Here, I mean, my question here, can we write supply end as industry?
No, not necessarily. No, we don't need this, because if you do that, this means that you will write the same equation twice.
Why we write two equations, supply end and supply ag? For
I don't need, because it's the same supply function.
Okay.
But I did this for the what I sent you in the chat box, because I'm talking about the data, not the equations.
Okay.
The data that comes from the SAM, I mean. Is that, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chebnem?
Will we give a shock to the system, such as labor supply, and what will be the increase, the percentage of increase in labor supply then?
You mean for the new model?
Yes, for the
we
new.
will see this on Wednesday, but the most important thing now is to have a working model for the before starting the session of Wednesday. So what you will have to do is to introduce all these changes across different parts of the model, run the model, try to solve your errors, the syntax errors and other errors, and based on this, we will correct the remaining errors that you still have on Wednesday, and we start running the simulations and see how this model performs better than the other when we have two sectors.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so if we don't have, yes? No question?
It's not a question. I was just asking, can you show us the slide of the model again so that we can see the equations, so I can take a photo of
you mean the structure of the model?
Yes,
yes, I will send you this to have it.
Okay.
Okay, so if you don't have more questions, then we'll stop here and we resume on Wednesday at 4 p.m. Cairo time with the last session. And please make sure that your GUMS is working and that you solve this code, because I mean, the more you do it on your own, the more you'll be able to develop a real model for your country or your research question. So please try to do your best in solving this code, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you, and see you in 2 days.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.